I realized it was this very communal experience for my family. Every weekend on a Friday, we'd go out together to whatever new release was playing at the local theater, and just that sense of that shared experience.
In March of 2001, David made history as the first Filipino-American to make a movie that got national distribution. After spending a few years touring film festivals, his film, Too Much Sleep, was picked up and given finishing funds by an indie distributor called The Shooting Gallery.
It's going to open in 16 cities. It's in the New York Times, the Village Voice, the New York Post, Roger Ebert. Then it was like, how did this happen? This is how it happens? This isn't how it happens. Are you kidding?
But then, disaster.
Out of the blue, I get a call that Shooting Gallery went completely bankrupt. They just went under, they tanked. In a day, their whole operation just vanished.
This is a story of how we saved my favorite comedy from my youth and shared it with the world. For a movie lover, New York City is heaven. There's so much there, so much to see. I moved there for college, literally to study film, and I did so at the best possible time. 2001 was a boom time in indie films. Films made on a shoestring budget, often outside of the big studios. They were quirky, interesting, and personal. They weren't all good, but so many of them were. When my family came to visit me, we decided to go to the movies. Something at one of those little art house theaters that New York was filled with. I checked the local listings and I found this film I'd never heard of, Too Much Sleep. A quirky comedy that took place just across the river in New York's often ridiculed suburban neighbor, New Jersey. It explored the weirdest, most unsettling people. The critics seemed to like it, but noted that it wasn't for everybody. One line from Roger Ebert really caught my attention. When I recommend a movie like this, there are always people who go to see it and challenge me. What was that about? Sometimes they send me their ticket stubs and demand a refund. They're not used to films this specific and unsprung. Others will cherish it as a treasure. Depends on what you're looking for. Well, we were a family that quoted Seinfeld as if it were a second language. This sounded like it was for us. We went, not quite knowing what we were in for, and it was exactly our sense of humor.
Jonathan, take him outside and beat the shit out of him.
Oh, shit.
My dad was wheezing, he was laughing so hard. For the next couple of years, I looked for Too Much Sleep on DVD, but there was never a DVD. It just didn't exist. Except for a few questionable copies on recordable discs, nothing ever materialized. Years turned into decades, and every once in a while it comes up in conversation. It's a wonderful memory. Since then, I've moved to Los Angeles and made a career for myself in home video. For the last decade, I've assembled a small team of nerds, and together we've made a real name for ourselves restoring vintage anime, making things that we wished existed and making it available to other people. But those weren't our discs. Those were discs we made for our clients. It was time for us to graduate, time for us to do something for ourselves. I knew exactly where to start. Within a day, I was emailing the film's director, a guy named David McKilling. David had also moved to LA and become a professor at both USC and UCLA, two of the top film schools in the country. And he literally could not believe that someone out of nowhere remembered his film.
It just kind of blew my mind. Yeah, that's all you said in your email. It's just asking about what's going on with the rights with Too Much Sleep. And then to hear about what you're doing and your obvious skill and passion for restoring and remastering. I know it's a horrible cliche, but it truly is a dream come true. I mean, this is something that I've tried to make happen, but for whatever reason, just really couldn't.
I wondered, had the film aged as well as I'd hoped? Comedies from the past could be so hit and miss.
All right, man, that's the last one. If you're not gonna take it, I will.
But honestly, this movie has aged like a fine wine.
Let's ride.
Jack, the hero of the story, is a mildly depressed young man who lives with his mom, works a dead-end job, and is generally adrift and directionless.
In Filipino folklore, there's a character who's called Juan Tamad, and in Tagalog, Tamad means lazy. He's a young kid, he's much like Jack, gets sent out on errands and has little tasks to do, and inevitably he gets distracted, a little lost and adrift, and gets into some kind of trouble. Oftentimes it's involved falling asleep, but hopefully, learns a lesson. And so those are stories that, my father would tell us. As any good folk story is, it's always imparting the values of one generation, one culture onto the next.
David and I worked together on who Jack was. You know, at that age, I wasn't quite sure how my life would end up. You know, everything, of course, through college was all structured. I was hoping to play professional baseball, and then I wasn't at that point. And it was pretty easy to relate to a young man who really wasn't going anywhere and didn't really know even what to try. I also related to him coming across this staggeringly beautiful young woman on a bus, and that very moment exploding with a little bit of hope that he's meeting someone, and then taking his eye off his bag and losing his gun.
After some bad luck, he is forced to interact with the people around him, a bunch of bizarre, mildly racist older folks who are nonetheless fairly kind to him.
You know, you really can only trust the Jewish ones.
That was something that I was very familiar with, just kind of coming across that and being in environments where people felt very comfortable and maybe even not consciously malicious or hateful, but using that kind of language, using that kind of rhetoric, those jokes.
And those Orientals, boy, let me tell you, they're very hard workers, very disciplined and everything.
And you gotta love their pork fried rice.
You ain't kidding.
Growing up in that area in New Jersey, it felt like there wasn't a day that went by where some little microaggression didn't happen at that time. And that's why I think a lot of those jokes ended up in there.
Yeah, I'll admit, I notice the casual racism a lot more these days.
Hey, I can do an impression of an Irishman. Do you want to see it?
Sure.
Now watch closely.
This was so normal when it came out that it barely registered a chuckle.
I'm drunk, let's fight.
Today, it's shocking, and it works better that way.
So I get this script, and as I'm going deeper and deeper into this story, I'm sort of wondering, what is this? I don't really. Is this a comedy? Is this an action film? It's really strange exchanges here, and then I was strangely amused by it. It seemed to every time I thought something was going to happen, it didn't. Every time it seemed that a joke was being said, it wasn't quite like a joke. I couldn't really tell. It was something I've never experienced before reading the script. It was weird.
But Too Much Sleep made an impression on me for more than its dry wit. You watch other movies and TV shows made in the mid-90s and it doesn't seem real. The fine details of life are much different on a Hollywood set. But this film was shot in real suburban American homes and businesses, and it feels so lived in and real, almost like it was shot in my hometown.
For me, who had only done theater with sets that are built in places that are isolated for play, here we are going into real places. We're in public, we're in a bus terminal, we're in people's houses that are, donating the spaces and yards and all of that. To me, that was an adjustment. That was an amazing thing, to be in a real place.
As I said, I knew that I wanted to shoot something in that area of Central Jersey. I wrote the script specifically for those locations because I knew we probably would be able to get them just because of friends and family who could help us out with that.
See that couch? My mom had that couch in our living room, and those soft upholstered seats inside of cars from back then.
Prompt service is required.
God, I could practically smell it.
Shut the fuck up.
I mean, I think you had two paths. You could just live there and embrace it and love it, or if you're already sort of feeling like an outsider for a lot of different reasons, ethnically, culturally, then to see it for its beauty, and there's a lot to love about suburbia, but also to be very honest and critical about what are the realities that are right there in front of you if you choose to see them.
Driving this car with this huge camera hooked up outside, $9,000 camera fixed to my door, sticking out into the next lane, trying to manage traffic and waiting for Pasquale to come around to saying his cue line. I had never had experienced anything like that kind of, intensity and danger and pressure. We did get pulled over once. It was nice to have the director be able to emerge from the back seat hiding with the sound equipment to explain, what I was doing.
And if I were, really objective in watching this, honestly, it still holds up for me. It really does. I mean, I see things that I definitely would do differently. I don't know, I like the film, and seeing it with really fresh eyes, it surprised me that it worked. The film had opened in March. We were feeling great. Everyone at Shooting Gallery was, at that time, were an amazing independent distributor in New York, one of my favorite. I just loved all the films that they did. Staying in touch, and everything's going according to plan. I think it was sometime early April. I realized, wow, I haven't heard from those guys in a little bit, like a week, which was strange because I was really hearing from them pretty much every day. This was a Friday. And then I did get an email back, said, hey, you got to give me a call. One of the executives, you got to give me a call. He explained that Shooting Gallery was bankrupt, They were closing their doors. Everyone was getting let go. That was it. They were cleaning out their offices, nothing happening. And I was stunned. I asked, well, what's going to happen to Too Much Sleep? It's out there, it's in distribution. And he said, I don't know. I don't know how much longer the doors are actually going to be open to the offices. They had a huge, beautiful complex. But I suggest you get down here right now. And if there's anything of yours that's Too Much Sleep related, you should come get it right now. Not tomorrow, now. Jumped on the subway, got down there, and I was shocked at what I saw. I mean, people were ransacking the place. I mean, people, I guess, who hadn't been paid in weeks and weeks. I saw computers going out the door. I saw copying machines being wheeled out. Posters were kind of smashed and thrown on the floor, and the glass was broken, and it was pandemonium. I found my friend there. Yeah, what do you have here? And I said, I don't know. And he said, let's go look. All of the mastering elements were in this separate room. The door was locked, and nobody had the key. There was nobody there. So he found this little crowbar, and we broke open the door. It was just shelves and shelves of shelves of all the mastering materials for all of their films. So we looked through, and I found the Too Much Sleep, 2 prints, Digibeta masters, and he said, yeah, you better just take this all right now. And I looked around, and there were everything from their catalog, from their library, just sitting there. And there were films that hadn't even been released yet. So whatever was in that room after I left, I don't know what happened to any of that. I got in the cab, threw all this stuff. I couldn't carry it all. I'm just really grateful that, number one, the film was released. We got the reviews, and that the basic materials back. Everything ended up in bankruptcy court. I had to get a lawyer. Those rights were just tied up for a long, long time until finally, got the rights back. There was no media support. There was no PR. There was no marketing anymore. They had DVD, they had international cable, they had everything. And so when they went away, all of that just vanished.
David fought for years to get the legal rights to the film back from the company's creditors, and he eventually succeeded, but by that time years had passed, and without a home video release, nobody remembered the film, and nobody wanted it. It was too late.
There's a big hole in my heart because this film that all of us, many, many people had worked so hard on and given their time and their talent and their energy, it never had the chance to find its way.
I think a lot of people, even back then, could relate to a 24-year-old just kind of drifting through life, just having no idea what the hell is next for him, and, living with his mom, and, it's just things not going well. That has gone from the time that it was made to now, from rite of passage to the life of the average American.
Yeah.
He wanted people's hair and people's costumes or wardrobe to not really loudly shout that this is 1995. And he had that on his mind, that he wanted this movie to connect with people decades later and to not have an element that might distract from that. The hope was that it's a human story about growing up, that's exactly what would happen.
I was wondering if what you thought, for Jack anyway, the way out of that was.
Well, we're looking at Jack as a reflection of me at that time. The Pasquale character, what he gave to Jack, that sense of, obviously a father figure, but a little guidance, a little support, a little encouragement, waking up, taking responsibility, being thoughtful and caring in how we treat people. At least for me, I hope that gives Jack a new path to start down. They're on the lawn, and he's got a new job, and he's dressed up, and hopefully there's something, maybe he can see a future for that.
Let me tell you something. There's only one success, and that's living the life the way you want.
This is a film I'm really proud of, and it feels like it connected with an audience, but it never had the chance to connect with a larger audience.
Well, I wanted the damn movie. I love that movie. And seeing it together was a really nice family memory. I wanted a properly made, nice, shiny, restored Blu-ray. The first thing we needed to do was find the actual physical film. David had copies saved in the Anthology Film Archive in New York City, and he had them sent to our friend Austin at Real Revival for scanning. But actual release prints are not ideal for making an HD master. They're meant to be played again and again. They're thick and durable, but they're a little blurry and their contrast is really high. Our friend Austin can get some amazing quality out of a release print using some special techniques. Not ideal, but the film looked pretty darn good. But then...
Hello, everyone.
We are going to pick up the original camera negative for Too Much Sleep. Originally, the negative was processed and stored in New York by Technicolor, the laboratory that processed all the film. They then closed. We lost track of the negative after that. I had no idea where it was for the last 20 years. We found out that the negative actually is safe. The storage facility that Technicolor has out here in Camarillo, so that's where we're heading right now. All right, should we take a look and see what's inside?
How long did Technicolor have these reels?
20 years.
Oh, wow.
This is our optical track,
Okay.
which is the soundtrack.
Right here. 226?
February 26, 2001.
Wow. So this is how long they've had it.
Yes.
I couldn't believe our luck. We thought those were in a landfill. Here we are with the original camera negative of the first film that we are attempting to restore. Okay, time to do another scan. Since the negative would be much better quality, we had Austin scan it at 4K this time. David also had an old master tape on digital Betacam of the old standard definition transfer. We used the old digital Betacam master tapes for the audio, which was much better quality than what was on the film, and we used those for color reference. Next, it was time to do dust and scratch removal. This is a tedious process using a very expensive piece of software called Phoenix. Most of the film cleaned up really nicely. Some scenes required a lot of delicate, shall we say, detail work. Going through a film frame by frame like this, looking for all these little tiny dots, it's not the most fun job in the world, but we got it done. Meanwhile, my colleague David Miranda did a full color pass. You see, when you scan an original camera negative, it doesn't have any of the color correction applied to it, so we had to match what was done on the Video Master. Luckily, using DaVinci Resolve, we were able to achieve a level of quality that was unheard of when the film was originally made in the late 90s. Finally, a real, honest-to-God, high-definition restored version of Too Much Sleep existed.
It's the movie that did sleep and did disappear, and yet because of the earlier experiences with it after it premiered at South by Southwest and then re-emerged and got distribution and was released all over the country in theaters and then disappeared again, there was always a sense that this thing would always just kind of keep us together in some sense. It was such an amazing adventure for us. Doing this film changed my life so much. Working so closely with a screenplay and a filmmaker turned me on to writing. I, like David, have become an educator, a professor in this world. I became a writer, a playwright. I could never forget, where all this started, that a person gave me this responsibility and this chance to play this lead role in his first and probably most important project.
This film was forgotten, nearly completely lost with only a handful of copies sitting on shelves collecting dust. Now everybody can see it. There are a lot of indie films out there, in various stages of being forgotten, languishing on outdated formats, in danger of going extinct, foreign films that might have gotten a VHS or DVD release, but been out of print for years and getting hard to find. I called my new label Whole Grain Pictures. Get it? Film grain. And Too Much Sleep was going to be our first release.
And it's really only been through you and what you're doing with Whole Grain Pictures. Feels like this is a whole new path for the film. Finally having the opportunity to share the film and the best version of the film in terms of what it looks like, what it sounds like. Yeah, this is something I've really hoped for a long time. Literally 20 years.
I don't know that I can get people excited about movies they haven't seen. Restoring these old films and making Blu-rays of them isn't cheap. I may lose a lot of money doing this, but I don't know. Decades of working with the anime community made me think, if you work hard and do a good job with passion, making something great, people will show up. Too Much Sleep comes out on May 7th, 2024. So now I have a boutique Blu-ray label. What else am I going to do with it?